welcome to the Authentic Youth Engagement and Empowerment Adoption Call to Action Community Practice event.
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today. Thank you for taking your time to be part of this event today, and we do hope it will be informative for you, help inform your daily work. Today's Adoption Call to Action webinar is focused on youth empowerment and engagement, and this topic was chosen as a result of consistent and widespread feedback from jurisdictions that this is indeed a high priority across the nation in terms of focus and in terms of an issue to address. This event was largely designed and led by people with lived experience and expertise and emphasizes the voices of young adult leaders. I do hope you will hear important and perhaps new insights about authentic youth engagement in achieving permanency, as well as in integrating the youth voice in all aspects of our work in child welfare. I would now like to introduce our co-facilitators for this afternoon. Jennifer Rose is the Youth Adult Consultant with the Capacity Building Center for State, and Joshua Christian is this summer an intern with the Children's Bureau in the Health and Human Services, working in the Office of Associate Commissioner Jerry Milner. So now I would like to turn the next part over to Jennifer.
Hi, thank you so much, June. And I just want to say a special thank you to June, Alicia, Kathy, Jennifer, Paul, and Nicole for planning this and getting this all together so that we can all be here today. For the first part of our webinar, we wanted to get a little bit of, get to know the participants a little bit and see where everyone's coming from today. So if you could pull out your phone, or you can click the link that's populated in the participant chat. It is pollev.com/centeryd.
A map of the United States is shown with the caption, "What state are you representing?"
And this is just an opportunity for us to see where we're representing from the child welfare community today. And additionally, just so our audience knows, there will be another opportunity towards the end of the webinar where we will also use the Poll Everywhere to get a little bit of feedback from what we have learned today. So just wanted to get everyone a little bit familiar with how to use that. And looks like we've got some from Georgia, some California, let's see, New York, obviously, some Florida, and Texas. Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm so glad that we have a pretty vast pool of states with us today. Okay. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Joshua Christian for our agenda today. Josh?
Hi, folks. For today's agenda, we're going to go through 6 different stages. And first, we're going to have an opportunity to hear from myself and Jennifer around the benefits of authentic youth engagement. Then we're going to hear from 2 models and young leaders from both You Gotta Believe in New York and Permanency Expeditors in Oklahoma. And we're gonna learn about how they've worked with their state around permanency and authentic youth engagement. And then we'll transition into the adoption manager's reflection, leading into the peer-to-peer discussion. And finally, we will have the time and space to reflect on what we learned today and figure out what tangible things that we can take home to our states and be able to start implementing in those areas around permanency and authentic youth engagement. Up next, we have our objectives, and the objectives are on your screens. And first, we'll explore some specific strategies for authentic youth engagement and empowerment of youth in the child welfare system. In their own permanency planning and informing system-level policies and practices, and agency strategies to achieve upon adoption. Second, we hope to increase participants' understanding about the importance of creating and maintaining a culture that values engagement of empowerment of youth. Third, we'll hear from 2 states and programs within those states about how they are engaging and empowering youth. And lastly, we will further open up some opportunities for peer-to-peer sharing around strategies you all use to engage and empower youth in your own jurisdictions. Throughout the event today, we encourage you to use the chat box and take advantage of it. We will be active in there as well. And up next, we're just going to go ahead and dive into our next activity. Jennifer, do you want to go ahead and start the conversation around benefits and engaging young people in their own permanency planning and the agency permanency planning and working with the agency as well around their permanency?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh, for giving us an overview of what we hope to leave and walk away with from today's event. So I just want to pause for just 1 second and bring attention to the chat pod. I hear a lot of people saying that maybe audio is not connected. Alicia has put the phone number and the passcode to connect with the audio, as you will have to call in by phone. So just to draw attention to that, it is in the chat pod for you. And thank you, Alicia. Okay. All right, and so as we're going to reflect on the benefits of youth engagement, 2 questions that we thought would be really beneficial was kind of breaking down what are some of the benefits of engaging young people in their own permanency planning, but then alternatively, what about engaging young people to support the agency's larger permanency efforts? And so I just want to turn that to Josh to speak on some of the individual benefits that he has experienced as in his own life.
Well, thanks, Jennifer. You know, when it comes to individual and when I think, my area right here, I think I'm going to be transitioning into the area of people to support the agency permanency efforts. That's where my points are. And so today, you know, I always think about how important it is to talk about engaging young people and why do we do that? And because we are the direct consumers of the system, right? And bringing young people to the table, we can start to reform a system that has been broken. And, you know, we don't really have a degree in social work before we age out, but we do have a degree quite directly in foster care. And, you know, alumni like myself and use their lived and professional expertise to educate the agency in all aspects around the around permanency efforts.
Thank you, Josh. Yes, and I love what you said about, you know, having a degree in social work is helpful for the professional side, but getting that firsthand insight of what it's like to go through foster care is also in itself a professional degree. So some of the individual benefits that I've heard from some of the participants that we have here today are really engaging youth in their own permanency planning helps them feel heard, helps them feel empowered, helps them feel like they get to be part of their own conversation that is about them. Youth being able to speak for themselves in their permanency planning not only helps them as an individual for personal growth, but also engaging themselves in their own life after the system. And then to share just a little bit about what some of my individual benefits were, I think that when a youth fully gets to engage in their permanency planning, it makes it real for us. It makes it a place where we can experience some positive growth by taking power over our life. We can identify people that we want to be part of our plan, that we can potentially have those long-standing relationships with, and then help us kind of evolve into the person, adult, or advocate that we want to be one day. And then additionally, the agency benefit side of that is the agency, I think it's important for the agency to understand that we don't want long-term involvement in the system, but when the involvement is there, we want that to be really thoughtful and intentional. So if you're networking and collaborating with the youth, the family, and within the program, you're getting a more effective plan developed together that's going to be really sustainable for, what your program purpose is.
I love how you just mentioned the idea of sharing power. When taking it to the agency, one benefit is being able to share power with young people in a way where, they can authentically be engaged and use their expertise in a meaningful way so that the agency can learn, grow, and just challenge itself to be a better system. I always think about one example, and there's so many that you can engage young people throughout the agency, but one example is, a few years ago, or about a year ago, I was in this training where I was debunking foster care myths around fostering teens. And in the beginning of the training, there was a survey and it just kind of asked the audience around if they'd be willing to adopt or foster a teen, and 22% said they would be willing to maybe do that. After engaging a young person at the table, 2 hours later, it had about a 40% increase for the survey in the end. And so I think there's so much value in bringing young people to this table and engaging them there.
Yes, that true equal partnership is essential to move both forward, individual and system. So awesome. Thank you all. And thank you all for hearing and listening to our reflections on that from the individual and now as professionals within the system. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce our first model program. We have You Gotta Believe, that is from New York. And we have Mary Keene, who is the senior advisor and also a foster and adoptive parent. We have Tori Adams, who is a young adult advocate, and then Ricardo Vasquez, who is also a young adult advocate. Okay. All right. And first, I would like to introduce Mary, and the areas that we'll be talking about are our program and project description, You Gotta Believe engagement approach, and then also what has made You Gotta Believe so successful in their impact and learning a little bit about their impact on the community. So I'd like to welcome you, Mary Keene.
Mary, if you're speaking, you might be on mute.
Yeah, the good old mute button got me. So, sorry. So You Gotta Believe has been around for 25 years, and from the very beginning, we recognized the expertise of credible messengers, both parents who have adopted older kids and, and youth themselves who are alumni of the system. So we have always engaged both of those populations in all the work that we do. Our whole program staff are credible messengers. And it's simply that, both Jennifer and Josh mentioned that they may not have degrees, and we have never, ever let that interfere with our hiring practices for people who have personal experience, because it is their life, it is their experience. They are very powerful, and we engage them in everything that we do, not just working with youth, but working with parents, working with the community. They're at everything that we go to, and that's been true from the beginning. And we have youth who are in care speak at our parent trainings, and we have parents speak about what the experience is like at all of our trainings. So I think that it's key, and it's not a difficult thing to hire and bring, and I always recommend that people hire both successful parents and alumni of the system to share their experiences. But how we're different from almost everybody on here, we don't have kids in our care. So over the years, we've had to partner with various agencies, and a lot of that depended on funding, who we could partner with, and things like that. And so we've had different kind of programs. Sometimes we've been under federal pilot projects. Sometimes we're working just more locally, but and funded locally. But we have always been able to maintain about an 80 to 85% success rate, because that's all that we do. We're not doing anything else with the youth. The agencies are responsible for everything else, and we're just focused on finding. And when we talk about permanency, I'm not sure it always means the same thing to everybody, but to us, it's family permanency. They should all be aging out of foster care with family, and that's all that we try to do. So again, we engage them. We're enormously successful. Kids are very resistant to this work often because they've been burned. Although we're an adoption agency, we don't use that word. We tell them, actually, we're working for them. We're there to help, and we want to show them that this is both possible, safe, and because it's alumni and parents, they get to see that. They join not just our classes where they see lots of people who are interested in older kids, which usually shocks them. And then we have them join events that we do where we have families that have been formed through You Gotta Believe, and they see them, and they see that there are parents there who are looking for kids, and we do game nights and events like that. So it's really about infusing them into everything that we do. And our Nobody Ages Out initiative, which formally started around 2015, is all about putting youth advocates out front and leading the charge, because they know how. They know how to engage youth, regardless of how skeptical or scared kids might be. They're reassured by learning about our program and seeing how we work. And I think they're also reassured by the fact that we're not part of any one agency. We have a partnership now with Children's Village, which is a large agency in New York that most people have probably heard of. And we're working specifically at their residential treatment center. And in the last, it's been operational for a little more than a year. We've worked with the team, and about 85% of the kids, 84% I think is the actual number, have left campus and gone to families. Some of them were reunifications, some of them were new families, some of them were people they knew in their life. We search all avenues and try to find out. And when the youth trust us and they begin to engage with us, they tell us where they AWOL to. And, we work with them. So to me, it's all about, as Jennifer and Josh said, they're the experts. And you've got to recognize that. You've got to engage them and bring them into the conversation. It's their life. And the youth are old enough to know exactly what they want and how you can help them get that. I think that's pretty much a summation of You Gotta Believe. That's all we do. We're very specialized.
Yes, thank you so much, Mary. It sounds like you all really explore all the avenues and the places where maybe some youth who are not thought about as much are as well. And I really love that you all have that in part of your mission. And it really shows that meeting youth where they are and truly hearing their story, because that's how you find sustainable permanency.
Right. And again, we don't use the adoption word. We just say, we're here to learn about you, to help you, and we do workshops for them as well, I forgot to mention. And the first one is, family is your right. And because they're scared, and so they often just tell people, no, I don't want a family. But if, the unpacking the no, get behind that and find out they all want to be loved. There's not a single kid I've met in 20 years that didn't want somebody to love them. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and really understanding what the permanency means to everybody might be a little bit different, but ultimately we all want someone there for us.
Right.
Thank you so much. And now I wanted to move a little bit into what are some barriers. So, Mary, what do you think gets in the way of that authentic and meaningful youth engagement? And do you have any solutions to offer?
Yeah, I think that, as I said, kids are afraid. And so someone will have a conversation with them, do you want to be adopted or do you want to have a family and stuff? And they'll just, they'll say no. Oftentimes they'll be asked, do you want a family or do you want independent living? And independent living sounds pretty incredible to a young person. Of course, they don't know what it means. And so they go for that because it's safer. And the solution, I think, is simply not use adoption word. Continue to work with the kid. Don't take a no and just document that and say, well, okay, now we've got to put this kid on, this child on a youth independent program or something like that. Just keep going back to them and show them that this is possible. Show them successful families. Show them youth who have left the program and gone to a family. They have to see that it's possible.
Yeah, so really like walking the walk and then talking the talk and then having the, the backup to prove that you're really there and it is about who it's supposed to be about.
Right. And again, all our alumni that are working with youth they've been adopted. Again, whether we talk about moral adoption, which is most people would call relational permanency, but all of our alumni are connected to a family. And so they talk about the personal value of that and how they were also scared at the beginning and they didn't want to work. And our advocates today will talk more about that.
Yeah. And Mary, I did want to invite you if you wanted to turn your camera on. I know we have Rico, myself, and Tori on screen, but that's up to you.
I forgot, again, another button. I forgot to start sharing. Too many buttons.
That's okay now that we're all here. But to go into our next question, Mary, what are some key principles and considerations for really implementing and sustaining that youth engagement and empowerment?
I think, again, consistency, showing them the possibilities. We do the workshops. We introduce them to other people who have been connected with families, sometimes just when we work at residential treatment centers a lot. So initially they might be very skeptical, and then they see a kid leaving. They see a young adult leaving and going with the family. And so that sort of piques their interest, and then they decide they want to find out more. And I remember one of the projects we did that we had a lot of difficulty getting started. None of the youth wanted to work with us. But, one or two brave souls stepped up. And then it was nonstop after that. We had an onslaught of referrals wanting to work with us. And actually, Rico, who's with us today, was part of that program. That was a federal pilot program out of the Children's Bureau. And so it's just demonstrating that it's possible, proving it to youth who have been burnt, a great deal by the time we're working with them. And other programs may not have worked with them. And other people too often have just maybe given up and said, well, they don't want it. They said they didn't want a family.
Okay. And, just really modeling that full circle perspective, bringing those who have experienced back into the system like we see with, back into the program like we see from Rico here today. And I know that you've talked about throughout a little bit of sharing, you've referenced a few tools like Unpacking the No. Were there any other resources and tools that you'd like to share with the audience today?
We use that. We have, I'm not sure that it made it to the resource page yet, but it will, questions. Questions, how to engage youth. And so again, it's not, do you want to be adopted? It's, more like, well, tell me about yourself. Tell me, if you had a birthday party, one of the ones that some of the staff use all the time, if you were to have a birthday party, who would you invite to it? Who would you want to be there? And that's where we find out the people that they care about and the people that they think care about them. And then we reach out to those people, and we have a conversation. And oftentimes people think that the youth is okay and the young adult is acting like they're fine and they got this and they want to be independent and they want to have their own apartment. And so the adults don't suggest anything different. And the young adult is afraid to ask the adult to be more than whatever they are. And so we kind of broker that conversation. And we show the adult what it is they can do for this young adult and how they can help them. And we engage them, we bring them into our classes where all we talk about are older youth and how to parent them. And again, it's taught by both alumni and it's taught by parents of older youth. So again, people are getting the most real experience you possibly can. And then they'll go back and possibly have a conversation with the young adult, or will have the conversation with the young adult. And would you like a different kind of relationship with this person who you know really loves you? And we work on it that way. So we have the typical kind of things, unpacking the no. We have the workshops that we do, Families You're Right. I think one of the things on there is a step-by-step process. We start working with the young adult at the beginning and how we work with them through the end. Because one of the most important things is when you make a connection is supporting both the family and the youth.
Yes.
If you just make a connection and walk away, it's a recipe for disaster because this is very challenging stuff, developing relationships when, young adults have trouble trusting people. They've had so many disappointments. So again, we stay engaged throughout the process, whether it's up until legal adoption, or many of our youth also don't get adopted while they're still in care because they know someone's getting a check, and what does that feel like to be getting, someone has to be paid to take care of you. So often they'll wait until they're adults and they know the check has stopped and the person is still there for them. And that's when they say, wow, they're real. And so, I'm willing to be adopted. Most of my kids were adopted as adults when they had already left the foster care system. So, so we'll make sure if it's not, some of these tools are not on there, we'll make sure we get them on the resource page.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, again, it just sounds like, as you got to believe, like Mary, that you all are just stay so present throughout the whole process, and that consistency shows not just the youth, but the families that the youth are now part of, that, you're there. And I know in my talking with Rico, I've heard a little bit about that too. So I want to go ahead and pass it over to you and invite Rico and Tori to our presentation, of course, to speak a little bit about your all's experience with You Gotta Believe.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Rico. Thank you for joining us. Rico is from the first program that I worked with at You Gotta Believe. So he's someone I'm incredibly proud of, and we were definitely involved. So Jennifer, do you want me to run through the questions?
Yeah, I can prompt however you would like to go about it.
Okay. No, I have them somewhere. There's so many papers on my desk right now, but for those who are listening, there's a lot. This team has done an enormous amount of background work on all of this. So
yeah, and I can
maybe I will punt, Jennifer.
Yeah, I can go ahead and no worries. Thank you all so much again for being present. So just to pose this to Tori, you and Rico, how did You Gotta Believe engage authentically from the beginning and throughout the process? And, what did that experience mean to you?
Tori, you want to go first, or should I go?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, go ahead.
Basically, in my opinion, YGB has, time after time helped me with things that I couldn't understand myself, even if I tried to. And basically, what YGB has been working with me, no matter what happened, no matter what the situation was, no matter what the problems, we had our problems and everything. Sometimes it's like, but the time that I was really going through it, and I was really like down every day sometimes, and just depressed and everything. But I didn't really show my feelings towards nobody. They were there, to actually express, that they're real people. They're really gonna be there for you. They're not sitting there just trying to get a paycheck or something, or just like, in general, I consider YGB my family.
Thank you so much, Tori. Thank you for sharing that. And then how about you, Rico?
So for me, from the beginning, I wasn't interested in, from the beginning, I wasn't interested in being adopted at all. And when I was living on residential, that was the last thing I ever thought or seen to happen in my future at all. Right? It was not something that was even an idea of any sort whatsoever. So, and then You Gotta Believe came on campus, and they were trying to engage me to be a part of what they were doing, and I was not interested at all, because I was one of the kids that was independent, like, in a way. I was one of the kids that I helped raise my little sisters from the age of 6. When I was 6 years old, I was warming bottles and changing diapers. So I wasn't interested in someone who wasn't my family member taking me in. But from the beginning, You Gotta Believe was very persistent. If they seen me, they would say, "Hey, how you doing?" They would talk to me over and over. They would always show some kind of support in some way. And I still wasn't convinced. And then eventually there came a time where they finally got my attention through money, where us youth were able to tell our story and people in front of people who actually were interested in what we had to say. And that's when I really began to get I began to start to grow some sort of interest towards You Gotta Believe, because they were very persistent in a lot of what they were saying. Like Mary said earlier, I began to see around campus. So I just peeked my head in really quickly to see what was going on, and I was amazed by the program and what they had to offer.
Yeah,
and I met my mom at 17 years old. I'm sorry, really quickly. I met my mom when I was 17 years old, and you got to believe there's something that no one has ever seen ever on campus, to my knowledge, right? So my social worker became my foster mother. My social worker was the only person out of everyone, I would say out of 500 people that I come in contact with, and besides You Gotta Believe, that was actually paying attention to what my strengths were, what my skills were, and where I could maybe have a better future. And she decided to talk to You Gotta Believe to make that possible. So had it not been for You Gotta Believe, I don't think that would have even started, because after I was placed, other social workers began to do the same thing.
Yeah, Enrico, what I hear from that is like being able to kind of tap into all options of people that are there and that show care for you, and looking at all of that, like, what about this for permanency, because I already have this established relationship. And then
right.
For Tori, like what I hear with you and speaking with you was kind of, Rico, you all both share that, like they came to a campus and they were talking with you about your story, but it was like really just wanting to hear it. And I know, Tori, you had said like that authentic self that that you finally were able to be. Do you want to share any thoughts about that?
That last part, I heard the beginning, but that last part, can you explain it again?
Oh, I'm just talking about the authentic self that you were saying that you got to experience with You Gotta Believe.
Yeah. In the beginning, my story is kind of more similar to Rico's. Matter of fact, to be honest, truth be told, is like me and him basically have the same story about how basically I didn't want a family. I wanted to wait until basically my mother gets better from drinking and everything, so she can get me out. But stuff wasn't working out. She was bouncing place to place. Going place to place. It was hard for her. She's struggling. Now, as we speak, I'm helping her out and everything. So paying some of her phone bills sometimes. But in general, it's like, yeah. At the end of the day, it's like with YGB, they actually helped me. They're half the reasons why I wanted parents, like foster parents.
Yeah, and that stability is important. Mm-hmm.
And the other reason why is that I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out of my placement that I was in currently, like about last year, because they're really doing me dirty in there. They're really doing me bad in there. So it's like I wasn't gonna take no disrespect from anybody. I'm a man. I deserve respect. I didn't get any respect in here.
Yeah, and making sure that you don't even have to be put in a place where you have to protect yourself in that way. And it sounds like You Gotta Believe really helps, respect your relationship with your mom, but also give you some other structure and stability in other areas of your life, and not having to choose like, well, if I have this, then I can't have this. Just looking at it all as a part of you and you, Rico, and you both stories. Okay.
Yeah.
So next, I wanted to ask you all, and it's storming outside right now at my place, so sorry if y'all hear some thunder and lightning in the background. But how
you said stormy outside?
It's storming outside where I'm at. But how did You Gotta Believe engage? How do they engage youth in their permanency planning? And then what has to be a part of that practice for it to be engaging to youth?
Okay, so on the other side now, it's kind of I kind of understand now more than before, a lot clearer now what like the process that has to be done and how things work. And I do see that a lot of work has to be done, and social workers can be overwhelmed and things like that. But what You Gotta Believe, everyone takes things on a calm, mindful note. This is what I've seen. So, for example, when we're engaging with youth, for example, when we were working with some youth in Children's Village, and trying to place them, we would connect with these youth every single day. And some youth we would connect with at least once a week, and we would inform them on what information we got. We would tell them what it is that we're doing, what's happening. We would ask the youth, what is it that you would like for us to work on for you? What's going on with your schooling, and how are things here on campus? How are things in the cottage? Is there anyone bullying you, and things like that? And if we do receive any feedback on any of those questions, then we pursue it accordingly to where it's not a big show and anyone is being embarrassed or put on the spot. And I think that is very helpful, because the youth speak to us like we've known each other for many years. I mean, also in my opinion, the greatest thing is being able to speak to a peer that knows exactly where you're coming from. That's also what got my attention in the beginning, is that the person that I was speaking to, she wasn't trying to ask me weird questions to put me on medication or anything like that. She was asking me questions to know who I was, and that's what we do. We, on this end, we speak to you to understand who you are, and there's no judgment. you're treated according to who you are. So if you're a youth that is very active, then we will make sure that we do some outside. When we meet, we'll meet outside. We go somewhere and we'll do something. I wouldn't, we wouldn't try to sit you in an office for 2 hours and have a chat. Something like that would happen. But going back to working on youth, when engaging youth and asking them what they want and what they need, we really go and do it. Like the next day, or we'll put on schedule for that week. For example, when working with the youth in CV, there was a day that we set out to go and meet every single one of the individuals that we had on that list that lived in New York. And we sat down in every single one of these individuals' living rooms, and we spoke to them about the youth. So that, on top of just constant communication with the youth and just constant information, it makes the youth open up and trust you, and they'll always calm down. There was a youth that had an issue once his mom came into the room. He got extremely upset, and myself and Ani came into the room to speak to him, and he basically ran to Ani and gave her a hug when crying, and calmed, and then the youth calmed down. So the trust and bonds are made because you have the youth's best interest in hand.
Well, and what I heard you say, Rico, is like modeling that community that we already have between each other, so you don't have to explain this, and that's something that I think I can echo on that too. And let's see, just to kind of pose this question, and what are some things that you all feel like get in the way of authentic and meaningful youth engagement? So we've heard some of the good ways that You Gotta Believe does, but what would be a couple of things that you'd like the audience to take away from what gets in the way? And just
what gets in the way? Sorry. All right, so for me, one of the barrier, a big barrier that was in place is that I didn't have any resources, and because I didn't have any resources, I was just left to just be there. So those kind of things, I was being judged by the people that were supposed to be taking care of me, so that I was just basically just living on campus. I never went to court. I never was asked any questions about how I'm doing or what I want to do with my future. There was no engagement whatsoever, right? So because there was no engagement, it was basically like after 15 years of just crying, you just stop. You just be quiet. And you don't respond to anyone. So those are the barriers I think that to get in place, is just really not taking the time to understand what's going on. Someone sees something and they automatically say, oh, the kid is doing this because of that. Everyone is different. So even it may be the same action, but it's different reasons for the action. Every action does not represent the same thing. So for me, I understand that individuals are trained and they've studied for these things, but the black and white only teaches you but so much. Like if we read through a book and we go to school for it, we can learn but so much. But if you but if you get to know each individual for who they are, then you would have better outcomes in relationships.
Yeah,
so
yeah, and like really individualizing that.
Yes.
So individualizing and taking the judgment out of it, kind of meeting us where we are. How about you, Tori? Anything that you'd like to add on what you think gets in the way of authentic youth engagement?
I'm sorry, repeat that question one more time.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, was there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with real quickly that you think gets in the way of authentic youth engagement, or what helped you to actually know someone was being authentic?
Yeah, really, it was just, in the beginning, I was just like, back in my day, I mean, like, when I was younger, I ain't gonna say back in my day, it's not like I'm in the 80s and 90s, so I'm funny. But, like, what you call it? I guess, like, when I was younger, in the beginning of being in foster care was the most hardest thing that has ever changed in my life, in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I always, like, at a young age, I was always crying, upset, I was mad, I punched the wall, broke glass, broke windows, threw bricks at windows, But after a while, I kind of just moved on, I stayed quiet, stayed to myself, because I don't like to explain myself to anybody. I don't really trust a lot of people or trust anybody, because, like, me and my mom, our bond is like, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that, she taught you what it meant to be able to trust someone with the way that they kind of explain things to you and how they carry themselves around you. And that statement that you said really stuck with me. How someone talks to you really shows you where that trust lies. And I want to thank you both so much for being present in here today and kind of sharing some of that, of your story, of yourself, and You Gotta Believe with us.
No problem.
Okay. And then next, I want to go ahead and hand it over to Josh as we move into the Adoption Manager's Reflection.
Thanks, Jennifer. And as we transition into the Adoption Program Manager's Reflection, I'm going to introduce Shalita Chang, who is an adoption administrator from New York, who works with You Gotta Believe in the relationships around promoting and permanency. Shalita, would you like to say a little bit about what you do?
Hi, good afternoon, Josh and everyone. Thank you for having me. So as Josh said, I do work with New York State Office of Children and Family Services. I'm currently the interim director of the Westchester Regional Office at the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. The Westchester Regional Office, although it's Westchester, we actually span beyond Westchester. We cover 9 counties, so our geographic area is really large. I work closely with Carol McCarthy, who is the Director of Office of Bureau of Permanency Services. I'm actually sitting in on Carol's behalf because she couldn't participate, so I do appreciate the honor to be here. Just a little small context about OCFS. So OCFS is one of the unique 13 states in that our child welfare services are state supervised and county administered, which means our local departments of social services and our voluntary agencies work directly with agencies like You Gotta Believe to implement state strategies to meet the needs of young people in care.
Well, Shalita, thanks for joining us today and just sharing this space with us. I know there's plenty on the line that know about you and are excited to hear your voice today. So thank you. And our first question today is, how does the work of the organization presenting today from your state connect with and impact the state system to assure the attainment and support of permanency for youth in the system?
Okay. Thank you, Josh. That's a great question. So as Mary pointed out, You Gotta Believe has been with New York State or been in existence over the past 2 decades. And in that time, they've assisted New York State's youth and contracted with our agencies and individual counties to assist with placement of older youth in care. You Gotta Believe philosophy that every child is adoptable and that no child should ever leave foster care without a permanent connection truly aligns with our child and youth focused philosophy at OCFS. And it's definitely an excellent example of the premium value that OCFS places on engaging youth and keeping them involved in their own permanency decisions. Over the past years, in addition to the direct engagement and empowerment of older youth in foster care and helping them achieve permanency, You Gotta Believe's impact in New York State has included an inspiration, has been an inspiration actually. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous because I went on after Tori and I'm just sitting here thinking about Tori and Rico's powerful messages, so please forgive me. That was so powerful. But
Thank you so
again,
much.
back to you guys. You're so welcome. I'm just sitting here and in awe of the message that you gave. You guys are amazing. But You Gotta Believe's impact has definitely been an inspiration to young people, as you heard through Tori and Rico, and also in the development of other organizations like Brave Hearts, who will speak with, I'll speak to you more about them later on in this presentation, but they've definitely had a very strong impact on New York State.
Thanks, Shalita. And wow, I love how you mentioned that they've been doing this work for 20 years, 2 decades, and that's pretty cool, given around how the system started in the early 1980s. But our next question today is, how else does your state currently engage youth in their permanency planning and/or in the broader child welfare system permanency efforts?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Sure. The second question is, how else does your state currently engage youth in their permanency planning? And, or it could just be, how does your state currently engage young people around the agency permanency efforts?
Okay, so New York State employs a myriad of efforts to engage youth in permanency planning. We have an organization called Youth in Progress, which is a foster care leadership organization, and it empowers youth like Rico and Tori to tell their stories, builds advocacy, creates leaders, offers peer support, raises public awareness about experiences of youth in care, and also provides educational material and information. New York State also hosts several events, such as our annual adoption event, where there's sort of like meet and greets where young people come out and they meet potential families who are looking to expand their families, and the young people come out and they educate, and they also speak powerfully, as Tori and Rico did, about their experiences, and they help inform decisions about policy changes.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm totally jealous. I wish I could have an event like that in my state back in Indiana. That's awesome, and so many states would benefit to have a program like this in their own. And our final question today, Shalita, is how is your jurisdiction currently including youth engagement strategies in your efforts to achieve your adoption call to action goals?
Let me think about that one. I think there are strategies like keeping groups like YIP in the forefront to help inform the decisions that we make about permanency, and particularly around permanency for our older youth and adoption, helps us to achieve those strategies. We also work closely with organizations like Brave Hearts. They're not an OCFS organization. They're an individual organization, more locally in Westchester. And what they do is they're like an advocacy group for young people in care. They particularly work with young people in residential care, and they go around to different residential programs and really hear the voice of the youth, form groups, and bring that information back to OCFS so that OCFS can meet all of our goals when it comes to working with young people, helping them find families, make those great connections that You Gotta Believe spoke about.
Thanks, Shalita. That's awesome. I love how I'm hearing how authentically they are engaging young people at the table and in several areas of permanency. And I really appreciate what you guys do. And thank you for sharing this space with us today. And now we're going to transition over to Permanency Expeditors. And the presenters are Martha Inga, Permanency for Teams Coordinator, and then Jasmine Pryor, the Youth Leader. Hi, Martha. I think you're on mute. But if you'd like to tell us a little bit about the model programs, we're happy to have you here today, and thanks for joining.
Sorry about that. The mute got me too, Mary. Okay, thank you so much for having me today. I am very happy that Jasmine gets to be a part of this with me. I really value her perspective, and thanks for having me. So I want to talk a little bit about the Permanency Expeditors. Permanency Expeditors were put into place in the state of Oklahoma about 3.5 years ago, a little bit more than that. And we really had to allocate some resources for our young people that were specifically going to age out or had high chances of aging out. And so we have a unit in Oklahoma called an Adoption Transition Unit. And I see some of my ATU people on here, so thanks for being a part of this and listening in. And the Adoption Transition Unit works specifically with our young people who don't necessarily have an identified placement, and they are secondary workers to that young person, just to be that extra level of support to the young person and to the primary worker. And so in Oklahoma, we have our case plan goal of PAP, which I think in other states it is APLA, another planned permanent living arrangement. And so in Oklahoma, we had about 300 young people of varying ages, anywhere from 12 and up, who had that case plan goal of PAP. And so this case plan goal basically is stating that this young person is most likely going to age out of care. And so we know the outcomes that come along with that, and we really needed to do more for them. And so the Permanency Expediter group was modeled, so to speak, after our Adoption Transition Unit, in that they were secondary workers to our young people, specifically age 16 or 17, who were at a high risk of aging out and had that case plan goal signed. So there were about 200 young people of the ages of 16 and 17 who had that case plan goal, and we wanted to really hone in and focus on that particular group with the Permanency Expeditors. And so the Permanency Expeditors' role was specifically to engage the young person in permanency conversations, regardless of their case plan goal. They became experts in all forms of legal permanency, whether it be adoption, guardianship, or reunification, as well as relational permanency, and how we encourage and support our young people in finding who those individuals are. And so what we found, like I said, those 3.5 years ago, is that permanency conversations were stopping, so to speak, once that case plan goal was assigned. And so, you really have to evaluate the culture of your agency and the work that you're doing with your young people. And we realized that we needed to do more. And so we wanted to carry on that conversation. And just like Mary said, they don't necessarily use the term adoption, and it's more about having conversations, having true, honest, and open conversations with young people on what they want their plan to look like, because like everyone previously stated, this is their plan. Young people know what they want. We just need to be able to listen. And so in terms of the engagement approach, like I said, young people and, the Permanency Expeditors were experts in all forms of legal permanency, relational permanency, and then our independent living services. There was a misconception, I think, that young people were either going to be adopted or they were going to participate in our CHAPE program, our independent living program. In Oklahoma, we call it our successful adulthood program because not everyone is going to live independently, not any one of us. And so our program is called the OASA program, Successful Adulthood Program. And so the Permanency Expeditors really tried to become completely immersed in the young person's situation, understand where the young person is coming from, and really be that support to the young person, but also to their peer, to that primary worker, and be able to support them. We found that there was a gap in the knowledge base for our field in terms of legal permanency and successful adulthood resources and programming. For a worker, they could, go for a couple of years without having a teen on their caseload. And so, like we all know, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so there was a gap in understanding really what authentic youth engagement is, what it looks like, what is absolutely normal adolescent brain development, and what that looks like, and how to support their young people. And so the Permanency Expeditors became experts in that field, knew how to engage the young people in these conversations, and then supported primary workers so that they could in turn have those conversations. And they also helped systemically within the system to really look at young people before that case plan goal of PAP was really assigned, to determine if we as an agency have done everything that we can to make sure that that is a truly appropriate goal, because a young person who has that goal is most likely going to age out. So the other, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the other part of that is that I mentioned, a part of normal adolescent brain development. It's absolutely normal for a 16, 17-year-old to feel as though they need to break away and be independent. I mean, that's a normal part of development. And so what we're asking young people to do sometimes can feel for them as though this isn't the direction they should be going in, that they should be able to do things independently, that they should be able to be on their own. And really, quite frankly, that's a fight or flight response. They're responding to this anxiety over aging out with, I got this, I'm going to do it, I can overcome this. But unfortunately, what that translates to is potentially workers pulling back because the young person is, maybe saying that they can do it on their own, they don't need any other people helping them. But when in fact, we all need somebody to be our support system and to be our cheerleaders and to help us support us, whether we're 16, 17, or 42, 43, whether we're in care or out of care. And so the Permanency Expeditors really had to take the time to bring that information to the workforce and to the young people, to let them know this is absolutely normal. Because once we can normalize their anxiety and their feelings about whatever type of permanency plan they're encountering, we can address the issues and we can get them the support that they need and that they're telling us that they need. And we just need to listen. And we need to listen beyond their words and know that the struggle for independence is normal at this age, but they shouldn't have to do it by themselves. And so Permanency Expeditors were not and are not the decision makers in the case. They play more of a supportive role to the young person and to the primary worker. And some of the other young people and speakers talked about being genuine and being transparent with young people. We know when people aren't being genuine with us and doing things for the sake of maybe checking off a box. And so as a workforce, we need to be able to really look at how we're approaching the young people, and are we being genuine, and are we being transparent, because that's what we need to do. And some ways you can be genuine, don't visit a young person every day on the same day of the month, say for the 15th, because that's when you go visit the youth. If somebody did that to me, I would think, well, that's just an obligation. They're not here because they really want to understand me or really want to know where I'm coming from. Pop in during the month on a day that you're not even scheduled to be there, and have a conversation. Say, hey, I was in the neighborhood. I want to see, just want to see how you're doing. It might sound planned, but for a young person to really understand that you want to be genuine, you want to understand them, they need to look at the cues that you're sending off. And so that's important for us to know as a workforce. And, engagement can't be rushed. And quite frankly, in this field, we are quite often rushed. There's deadlines, there's policies, but authentic, true engagement with young people takes time. And, we don't necessarily trust every person with our most intimate plans and our most intimate feelings. And why do we expect our young people to do that? Engagement requires trust, and it takes time. It takes time to build. And then just knowing that every young person's journey is unique. This is not, every young person is not going to have a similar permanency plan. Their goals are going to be different, and we have to be able to adapt and find those resources for them. The other part of engagement was really providing accurate information. What we found is that there were young people who, for whatever reason, stated they didn't want to be adopted, but they weren't able to really articulate what it was. And one, we can't come into the approach with that adoption word like Mary said. We have to really understand the young person and provide them all the information, all the correct information for them to make the decision on what they want their permanency plan to be. And so we found that there was a lot of times young people felt as though if they didn't age out, they weren't going to be eligible for education benefits, for example. And that was not the case. Young people could enter into a legal form of guardianship and still receive those benefits. So that was part of our engagement approach. It's really be authentic, be genuine, get the information out, and it is not our role to push one way or another, whether it's legal or relational permanency, but we need to encourage, we need to support, and we need to provide the young people, and not just the young people, but any prospective adoptive families or guardianships. Guardians. We need to provide them with the resources and the tools and the information to make an informed decision. We don't make informed decisions without having all the information. And if you're a young person that is not being engaged and that is not receiving that information, why would you be able to even think that you can make a decision if that is not provided to you? So that was our overall approach. They became experts, our permanency expeditors became experts in all legal forms of permanency so that they could engage and tailor the resources to that young person. And so, yeah.
It looks like the chat box is like blowing up there for you and cheering you on. But I'm loving everything I'm hearing, and especially about meeting people where they are and how young people really aren't a checkbox, and we're humans, and there's so much power in treating humans like humans, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I just wish we could just have 100 of you. Is there anything else you'd like to provide around the no barriers? Okay, we're on to the next one. So Martha, can you tell us what you think gets in the way of authentic and meaningful youth engagement, and what are some solutions?
So I think that basically, what I discussed right now, as far as permanency taking time, whether it's legal or relational permanency. It takes time, and every person's journey is different, and our field staff need to be able to feel supported, and them also having the information and having the knowledge so that they can provide it to young people. And so, in terms of the solution to that, I would say be transparent. I said it earlier, and listen with the intent to learn from our young people, not to fix. It's our nature. It's our human nature as social workers to want to fix the problem and fix it quickly. But in order to serve the young person appropriately and to the best of our ability, we need to be able to listen beyond what they're saying, really evaluate and provide them the resources to help them navigate their path.
Thanks, Martha. And I think, you're so right. When it's almost like seeing a fire, where the first thing you want to do is like put it out. And we got to kind of be intentional about listening. And it seems like you guys have that focus, and I'm sure many young people very much appreciate it. And I think we already touched around key principles and considerations. Is there any others that you'd like to mention in this space?
Just that we can't get to legal permanency without relational permanency. We need to really be able to foster those relationships or help our young people foster those relationships and build that up. And then if we can do that successfully, then we may be able to get to legal permanency. But I don't think that's any different than any one of us would want for ourselves at work or our kids, and so we need to be able to do that for our young people. And the other thing is just legal permanency and independent living services are not mutually exclusive. They need to be simultaneously explored, and we need to be able to get that information out. So it would be important to really assess yourself as a professional and what information do you have, and if you're lacking in that information, reach out to your supervisors, reach out to your program staff, use some of the resources that we'll provide to help you get there.
Awesome. And I love that, being intentional and thinking like, people only know what they think they know. And if you've only heard X, Y, and Z, fact checking it and is really important to get the right resources, because these are lives we're talking about, not just numbers. And I guess the final area here is there any other things around resources and tools? I think you just mentioned a few, but I just want to offer this space real quick.
No, just there were two when we first started this work. When a Teen Says No to Permanency, Casey's Family Program publication, and talking with older youth about adoption came in very handy, even just to engage the young person in the conversations. And then we assessed our program. We assessed what we were doing, and we looked at resources and created resources to tool our agency, or not tool, excuse me, but to tailor it to our agency, and so that we could provide these specific resources to our young people. And one is, again, facts and myths on resources if they achieve permanency. And then another one is a postcard, so to speak, that discusses the difference between legal relational permanency, the benefits of each, and our OCSA program, Successful Adulthood Program, contact information in case they have questions. And I would just, last thing is that our Successful Adulthood Program really integrated legal permanency within our program. And so we discussed this, we busted barriers, we answered questions on the difference of between legal and relational permanency. We integrated that into our team conference, created publications to support our young people so that they could make an informed decision, and I think that was key to being able to do better and do more.
do better and to do more. That's a great way to transition right there. Martha, I appreciate you letting me take some time to interview you. I'm going to transition the space over to you and Jasmine, and thanks again.
Sure. So Jasmine Cromwell, she is one of our youth advocates. She has expert knowledge on authentic youth engagement, and she also works with our alumni group. So thank you, Jasmine, for being here today and talking with me about authentic youth engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jasmine, I said a lot, and I know I talked fast. So I apologize for everybody who had to listen to me talk fast. But can you just take a minute to respond to some of the key points of what I discussed on meaningful youth engagement, and just share your expert knowledge on what meaningful and authentic youth engagement should look like?
Yes, so unfortunately I didn't really have positive authentic youth engagement, but I will say that if I did, then I definitely would have felt like a sense of accomplishment in the development of my plan. I think my biggest thing was just I felt that I was kind of like left in the dark. So just being able to have that engagement and to be involved in whatever was happening would just make me feel accomplished, and make me feel successful in whatever, was going to happen in my plan. I think one of the most important things is that the youth is able to speak first, in any kind of like family team meeting or, any kind of planning that happens within that process. And then also just the adults that are involved in the planning process, just being supportive of whatever the youth wants, because the biggest thing is like if the youth wants to be engaged, but if they're being like turned down or shut down, for whatever they want, then like what would be the point in that? And then also just taking the time to build that authentic relationship with that youth. I think oftentimes we kind of just feel like we're just like a number or, just another kid. And so like it should never be that way.
Right. No, definitely. I agree. It's unfortunate, and I know that it's unfortunate that you felt as though that you weren't able to experience that. But what brings me so much pleasure in knowing that you're here and you're advocating for changes. And so as a state, the state of Oklahoma, that's something that we're working towards. And so I appreciate your really frank assessment and your tips. Thanks. So how do you think someone should feel when they are experiencing effective and authentic youth engagement? I know you touched on it, but how should a young person feel when they're truly experiencing this?
Given like all of the resources that are available to them, they should feel empowered and confident and strong and like ready for whatever path they're going to take, whether, whatever they decide that they're going to do. I just think that it's important that they feel like they're ready, because I mean, that's the worst whenever you think that you know where you're going, but then, you don't. And actually, so I work for the OXO program, as some of you know. So that's actually one thing that we're working on, like a project, is just like contacting the youth and making sure that they do know all the resources that are available, and making sure that they know everything that they want to know. And I think that this is kind of what helps encourage the youth to actually engage in their process, is being aware of everything and not being left in the dark. But yeah, basically just feeling that empowerment and feeling like a sense of control of what's happening within their lives.
Yeah, and I heard, I think it was Rico who said it, talking about, not feeling like a number, and really being part of that conversation. So no, yeah, you're absolutely right. So what do you think gets in the way of it, and what was your experience in what do you think got in the way of authentic youth and meaningful engagement?
Well, I think the biggest barrier for sure is just the lack of time, which, I mean, unfortunately, we're not infinity, right? we don't have all the time in the world. But I just think the biggest thing is just making sure that you're actually building that relationship with that youth, because that's how you trust people, you know. So if you don't actually like sit there and try to build that relationship and like spend time with them, how do they know to trust you? How do they even know who you are? How do they know that you have their best interest at heart? You know what I'm saying? So like having that time and putting that time aside is so important in building that relationship with that youth. And then obviously lack of knowledge, which I've already talked about that, like, you know, making sure that they know all the resources available. And then a big one for me is just like a language barrier, which is basically just having open communication. So if you're talking to the youth and they don't even understand exactly what you're saying, then how are they supposed to fully engage in whatever is going on? So like I think something to kind of help that is to just make sure that everyone is comfortable where they are, you know, and they can ask questions if they don't understand what's going on, or maybe what something means, or, you know, maybe whatever's going to happen. So just, yeah, having that open line of communication is just really important.
Thank you. I was going to ask you what are some solutions, but you gave them.
Yeah, I know. They kind of went along with it.
No, you did. Thank you. So yeah, and I think it's awesome that you're reaching out to the young people as they're aging out, and that's what Rico also said. You know, it's different from getting information from someone who is paid to give you that information than it is to hear from a peer, someone who's been in your shoes. And so I'm really proud of you, and I'm lucky to get to work alongside you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to say thank you so much to both of you all for sharing today, and just, you know, really driving home, like, modeling that equal partnership so well. Like, we grow from each other when we work together, and then we elevate the entire child welfare community when that happens. And Jasmine, the point about the communication barrier, that resonates so deeply, because we have to understand that power dynamic that happens in this communication. Like, we're coming from a place of like, I don't really have a whole lot going on for me here, making me feel too good, so help prepare me. Don't try to do it for me. Teach me how to do it, because just because I don't have the skill yet doesn't mean I can't one day. So like recognizing that. So thank you all so much. This was amazing. Thank you. Next, we're going to shift into, we have a video from our, we're actually going to shift into our peer-to-peer discussion. We wanted to get the participants a little bit engaged into what we'll be doing or what we've been talking about during this presentation. So I just want to pose this to you all, and I will have Alicia and Josh looking for your feedback in the participant chat, and they will be coming and talking on as well. So Alicia, I want to just go ahead and invite you and Josh on, and then the question that we'll be talking about first is, what are some lessons learned that you'll be taking away from the presentation and discussion here today?
Great. And thanks, Jennifer. This is Alicia. I just want to acknowledge that we are at the scheduled end time for this event, and we know that some of you may not be able to stay on with us. We want to acknowledge that. We're excited to have so much great information and content and engagement in this event. So we are adjusting things a bit here, and we hope that you keep sharing in the participant chat. What we're going to do is invite you to stay on if you are interested and available, so that we can continue the peer-to-peer discussion verbally and in the chat if you'd like, going past the hour. But we want to make sure that for those of you who can't stay on, we recognize those scheduling challenges. We do want to just go ahead and show you a little bit of our wrap-up slides. We're going to sort of switch things around a little bit just so that you can see some of the upcoming information that we have. So I'm going to invite Jennifer Pyle to come on very briefly here, our colleague Jennifer, and just run through these next steps. And then, again, for those of you who can stay on and keep participating in the peer discussion, that would be great. So Jennifer Pyle, can I turn this over to you briefly?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, just real quickly, we're going to continue having opportunities to come together The next scheduled community of practice is in September 1st, focused on family engagement, family finding and engagement. October 14th is around state agency court collaboration, and then we're going to continue with the monthly e-blasts coming out to you. So be looking for those. This is a reminder that we do have our Child Welfare Virtual Expo coming up. It's available to register. Please do so at your earliest convenience. And if you have any questions, please reach out to June, Jennifer, or myself. We have lots of Jennifers on the team. We can hopefully answer any questions that you have.
Contact information. For general adoption call to action inquiries, contact June Dorn, National Adoption Specialist, Children's Bureau. Email june.dorn@acf.hhs.gov. For adoption call to action, contact Jennifer Marcelli, Senior Manager, Foster Care and Adoption, Capacity Building Center for States. Email jennifer.marcelli@icf.com. Community of Practice. Contact Jennifer Cannell Pyle, Lead Knowledge Management Specialist, Capacity Building Center for States. Email jennell-pyle.cannell-pyle@icf.com.
Remember, the resources are available. And please, before just as a reminder, please provide feedback in the evaluation, either as you close out today or when it comes out in the reminder. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you for the peer-to-peer.
Thanks, Jennifer. So now, Jennifer Rhodes and Josh, we're back into the peer-to-peer sharing portion for this, and thanks to those of you who are staying on and who are interested. Jennifer, do you want to read out this question, and then I'll share some of the things I've been seeing coming in the chat already?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, and thanks for educating on, the further adoption call to action goals. Again, just to get some peer-to-peer sharing, we wanted this to be reflective for everyone involved, including the audience. So what are some lessons that you have learned today that you'll be taking away from this presentation and discussion?
So one of the comments that came in, I don't know if it was specifically related to this discussion or this question in the chat, but one that I wanted to highlight. Someone noted that many of the comments that Rico and Tori shared really align with the messages of the adoption competency training, the NTI curriculum, and that Olivia, who shared this, is excited for staff to receive that training. And I think it's such a great way to think about how there's this interaction between the conversations we're hearing from youth and young adults and youth leaders and the high-level programs and really best practices that are being put out into the field. So I think it's great to note that, and for all of you to be thinking about with that adoption competency training, how that can be a resource in your system and keep moving this work forward, including the youth engagement and empowerment work. Did other people have lessons learned that you're taking away from today's presentation and discussion that you wanted to share? And key insights?
I haven't looked at it.
Well, let's put up the other questions that we have for this time as well, because I think they're also interconnected. So can we show the next slide? And we're curious in hearing, and we think you all would like to hear from each other about how does your state currently engage youth in their own permanency planning and in those broader child welfare system efforts for permanency planning. What's currently happening in your systems for how you're engaging youth at these various levels? You can either type it in the chat, or again, you're welcome to speak up over the line. All right, I'll share another one that I've seen in the chat. It says, Nebraska has been working on a proposal for positions for permanency expediters after hearing Martha and her team at the January meeting. So I think that's another an exciting indicator in lots of ways. First of all, it was great that as Martha talked about those permanency expediters at the January Adoption Call to Action Summit, there was some, looks like a quick impact in terms of moving forward for another state working on figuring out ways to fund those positions. So that's really great to hear that ripple effect. And I imagine many others after today's conversation may be thinking about ways to apply that permanency expediters approach to your systems.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that I was hearing from the groups and that were present here today, and the youth also that are advocates from the groups, but also professionals in the field now, because we get that dual perspective, you know, challenging those, the meeting dynamics, challenging how things have been traditionally done. Like we've had to really to grow a lot in the system, and with that, the feedback that we get from that partnership, I know that with my social worker in particular, like she sat the plan down completely empty and was like, you know, fill this in, you know, she made it real for me, and because I just didn't want to be a part of trying to figure it out because I was just so burned out. So it's, you know, really unpacking that no would just be something that I would say here when we're looking at engaging youth in the larger child welfare system is revisiting maybe some of those youth that have even aren't in the system anymore. Like, what could we have done? Like that good feedback learning.
Yeah, and Jennifer, just to build on that, one of the great comments in the chat here, someone was saying that they really like the resource that's called "When a Teen Says No to Permanence, What he may be really saying is," and I think it's such a great message that there's so much behind that no. So as we talk about unpacking the no, and you know, we heard it from Mary that you got to believe about thinking about how the wording may matter, that people may have a reaction if we ask initially if they want to be adopted, but if we're really thinking about how do we have these conversations and think about going more in depth, you know, that's where I think a lot of that authenticity comes into practice, is how do we really think about ongoing conversations and really helping youth explore their options and work at their pace so that we're helping them move to permanency in a way that makes sense for them and we're not forcing it into certain boxes.
Yeah,
I totally agree right there. And I totally agree too. I think, you know, as long as we're meeting young people where they're at and then we're moving from there, but before we can, like, you know, in order to help them, we have to meet them where they're at, and then we got to move forward, and that looks different for every single body. So I totally agree, and these conversations should be ongoing and have boundaries in the sense of you can always revisit them and nourish them.
Great. Just with this, the question that we have up on the screen here as well about how other systems are currently engaging youth, I wanted to highlight a couple of other great comments in the chat. One group is using a book they created for teens called Let's Talk, My Path to Permanence. And that sounds like a great, based on the title, sounds like a great resource, and really thinking about how to have materials for young people that are in different formats. So some of it's conversation, some of it's having a booklet, some of it's having them be able to talk with their peers or with other foster care alumni. I think thinking about the different forms of messaging is really important as strategies for really bringing in that youth engagement. Also, in terms of what other places are doing, I see that Michigan has begun work with the Northwest Adoption Exchange to develop new in-depth profiles. And I know that's a program model and a strategy that we've had come up in some of these previous adoption call to action discussions that many people are excited about, where you're really, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's this approach, if I can give a shorthand, where staff are working with youth to help them explore what is it they would want prospective parents, prospective families to know about them. So it's really empowering youth to think about what do I want shared about myself, and then asking youth, what format do you want to use to share that information? So it might be a more traditional kind of expected narrative, like a photo listing narrative, but it might be something like a podcast, or one young woman recorded a makeup tutorial video, like a YouTube tutorial. Someone else did a really creative video interview with himself, where he played both the interviewer and the interviewee. And I think there have been art displays and songs. So it's a way to really think about how you can empower youth to think about what is it they want to put out there into the world about who they are and what format feels like the right expression for them. So I think it's a great way to think about those layers of youth engagement and empowerment, and letting them create the format for themselves as opposed to fitting into boxes that we may have created for them. So should we go on to show the next question as well? I know we had posted all of these in the chat, but this is where we really want to help you all think about how to take ideas that you've heard about today or maybe had reinforced in today's discussion and presentation, and think about what strategies you're looking at applying or maybe adapting to put into your adoption call to action efforts, and to improve your overall youth engagement practice. So we'd love to hear from you. Again, you can unmute your line or put it in the chat, but what ideas do people have in terms of how you're going to take insights from today for your adoption call to action and ongoing youth engagement? Any thoughts to share, things that you're going to take back to your teams or may want to dig into more to see if it would work in your system? All right. Well, we know that, some of these things you may need to think about and have the ideas sort of sit for a moment, think about how to apply it in your system. So we encourage you to keep thinking about that, and again, thinking for your adoption call to action plan, but also beyond, and really think about how can you take ideas and strategies from today and weave that into your ongoing work in a really sustainable way. So we hope that these conversations and presentations today spark some of that thinking. So now I think I'm going to hand it back to Jennifer and Josh. We're ready to do this word cloud. So for those of you who are still on the line, you get to see this great visual.
Awesome, and thank you so much, Alicia. So this is another chance for interaction. We wanted to see kind of what are some elements that you think are important to authentic and meaningful youth engagement and empowerment. And so how this will work, Nicole has populated the link into the chat pod. And so you can click on that or type that in your cell phone, and you'll be able to see your responses as they come up. And again, the question is, what are important elements of authentic and meaningful youth engagement and empowerment? And this could be something that you learned today or something that you may already be applying. Okay, so we're seeing youth-centered, trust, humility. Yes, definitely humility. We have to be able to say, like when we aren't doing our best, then how can we learn together? That's what it's all about. And I want to also open the opportunity for Tori, Rico, Jasmine, Martha, Mary, and if any of you all would like to expand on what these words mean to you, feel free to unmute your line and share how that applies to you. I know that transparency is a huge one for me. I think that, in order to make sure that youth know what is going on, and for how I knew what was going on in my own life, was someone had to be transparent with me. It's not protecting me by keeping stuff that is important to my future from me. Helps really set the standard for who we're going to be. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, this is Rico. So Communication is one that's very important because like something that I've learned since when I was much younger is even from my personal experience with it happening to me. I learned that it's better to find solutions rather than try to have control over the individual, over the kid. So communication is a big one for me because if you're, you know, even though I'm let's say 15, 16 years old, I've experienced more hardship than you've ever experienced in your life, and you're 40 years old. I've experienced way more stress, higher level stress levels than maybe, you know, everybody's life is different, but I've experienced so much to the point where at 15, 16, I feel as if I'm in my 30s. But I don't realize until I'm in my 30s that I was actually really just a kid back then. So communication is very important. Really understanding what works and what doesn't work. And when I say communication over control is just coming in with a more learning and teaching attitude. Like, I'm going to learn from this kid. I'm going to learn who this kid is. I'm going to learn who this person is. I'm going to learn from this kid how to deal with another kid. You know, things like that. You know, so communication.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rico. I think that is very important too. You know, and kind of going back to some other themes I heard throughout is that consistent and reliable communication. Like, those have to be key aspects of it. Showing up sometimes, showing up when it's hard, showing up when it's easy. It's we got to be there for all of it together if we really want to model what it really means to be engaged and empower youth.
Yes. And also, I just want to say one more thing about the communication part that I would like to add on with the whole family-oriented system. For example, with communication, not only do we communicate with the youth and their parents and their workers, we also just communicating with your coworkers and speaking about different things. So, for example, giving your coworker tips on how maybe they can help a youth. And if you see something that may be unhelpful within your coworker, respectfully, you can tell your coworker that the way that they may have handled that kind of escalated the situation. So just constant learning and constant growth is another thing too that I feel that is very important. It's, you know, just constantly growing in the field, emotionally and even professionally, I think is also. So just keeping each other accountable as co-workers and how we deal with kids and keeping the right thing forward is very important also. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, accountability. I love that. I love that. Okay. Did anyone else want to share that was here with us today?
I think I would say youth-centered. It kind of stands out to me. You know, I've heard about a lot of young people. I mean, the normalcy of a young person who grows up in child welfare might differ so different from the home they're going into. I remember there's a home I was in, and like the second week I was there, I got in trouble for eating a french fry with my hand because it wasn't with a fork. But like making sure things are youth-centered and relatable and just so, and learning and like not really setting expectations, but also being willing to grow, kind of how Rico just mentioned, really stands out to me.
Yes, that's how we got to get this work done, is being all around youth-centered and putting us in some power roles. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here today, especially to Mary, Rico, and Tori. I really want to thank Martha and Jasmine. I appreciate the work that You Gotta Believe in Permanency Expeditors is doing, but also the accountability that you all are bringing to your states and your communities about how to really move this work forward and be really youth-centered and youth-led, and sharing the impacts on the communities that you all are making. I appreciate you all being a part of this. And again, thank you to June and everyone that was on the planning team for letting us make this happen today. And it's been an awesome experience, and I hope that everyone else enjoyed it, and excited for future adoption call to action events.
Stay connected with the Center. Sign up for news and updates and stay informed about what's happening at the Center. Website, https://public.govdelivery.com/accounts/USACFCBCS/signup/10906.